This is not the case at all for project-orientated agency business. There it is, if there is no budget anymore, suddenly the engineers or software developers lose interest very quickly into the clients and go to the next clients. We don't want to have that. And instead, we want to have a constant interest in becoming better every day. So refactoring the software, delivering new features on a daily or weekly basis, and really making sure that the changes we make in our software will impact as soon as possible and we get feedback from that. Because this is the actual cycle of business. So when we do that as engineers, the business people can do that as well and use that new changes and features to create more money out there by selling the vision or apps, or even selling an extended version, a better version of the old vision. And this is a great mission, a great shared goal to have. And the key for that, as I said, is to have a shared SaaS model. Hello, fellows. Good evening. Today I want to talk a little bit about what have changed in the small software space for me personally in the last year. So when I started with software back then, it was around 15 years ago, 16 or something like that. And I'm talking about really creating software as a business, as a real business. Things were mostly based on contracts, the typical agency type of work. And these days, it's vastly different. So what we see today is more the kind of SaaS everywhere. So everyone wants to rent software instead of building software. So why is that? And the reason for that is, what I can tell so far is that there are actually some hurdles how you actually can close leads. So of course you can offer someone software for a great price and they will own the software, you will build the software for them. But the problem with that is that there are so many, let's say, governmental hurdles, other hurdles in larger companies, especially, and in smaller companies, like hurdles with budget, with risk. I want to quickly talk about those things because I think that it is quite interesting to know that and then to understand why my thinking has changed, that SaaS and customized SaaS is actually the future I want to be part of when it comes to software development. So I'm still fascinated from the idea of creating software solutions for business problems out there. I love that. Always love that. It's just great. It's still my vocation. I love that. But what I don't like at all is the typical traditional way of working for agency clients. Or actually as an agency, so it doesn't matter. So there is basically a project contract and you do something and then there's a little bit of maintenance, sometimes more, sometimes less. This is not only the business model is crap, it is basically leading nowhere, so no one can really grow with that. And the other aspect is the bad culture in this case. So you will never have an engineering culture with a lot of ownership in such an environment because you are very limited with what you can do in terms of good practices, good methodologies, or something like that, just because you have this one-time constraints. I just call them like that. So you have a one-time payment, a next-time payment, a little bit of hosting, stuff like that, but it's never enough to do good refactoring, good product planning, good for example, continuous delivery or something like that. It is very hard to do those things because it never feels good as the executing company. It's probably quite interesting for the ordering part, so for the companies who are giving you that job, but not for the engineering part. And unfortunately, it is a very common thing to have that in place. So how can we do something about that? And the actual question what comes to my mind is to really say, think about the current trend, or current, it's for years now, where we have this subscription-based model, where we really think about, okay, we pay something per month and we expect something in return. So instead of having a big booklet of requirements, acceptance criteria, which changes over time, in a one-time thing, and you need to estimate a year in advance how this work out. Instead, you go and define just some requirements and qualities you want to have and achieve. and the context you are in, which is then the business context, the idea, the vision, right? And you go to a business person with that, or a group of persons who have a good business vision, and you with the vision of a engineering team who is actually willing to dig into those business problems and solve them together with the business people, right? To have that in place and offer that for a monthly subscription. This is, in my humble opinion, the future of software development, because all the modern practices, all the, let's say, the real idea of agile, not the Scrum stuff, the real idea of agile, to continuously deliver value, that is something which you only can achieve if you have a continuous flow of business, which means that the business needs to be connected to the engineering department in order to sustain that, which means that the more successful you become as an engineering team for such a business endeavor, the more successful the business can become and the more funded the engineering department actually is. This is not the case at all for project-orientated agency business. There it is, if there is no budget anymore, suddenly the engineers or software developers lose interest very quickly into the clients and go to the next clients. We don't want to have that. And instead, we want to have a constant interest in becoming better every day. So refactoring the software, delivering new features on a daily or weekly basis, and really making sure that the changes we make in our software will impact as soon as possible and we get feedback from that. Because this is the actual cycle of business. So when we do that as engineers, the business people can do that as well and use that new changes and features to create more money out there by selling the vision or apps, or even selling an extended version, a better version of the old vision. And this is a great mission, a great shared goal to have. And the key for that, as I said, is to have a shared SaaS model. It might make sense to build upon trust and credibility, which means that you as a software engineering team, or the partners of the business in this case, you need to be credible as partners. And this is not that easy. So you need to be very transparent. You cannot hide problems in any way. You need to be very openly about current ongoing problems, delays, or something like that. On the other hand, the business needs to be not poking all day long on deadlines, instead understanding the current pace of the software engineering department is the current pace there, which means this is how fast we can go. We show every day the results. You can see that on production, staging, wherever. You can see the outcome of every day's work. And this is enough transparency and credibility, especially when we talk about upcoming problems, ongoing problems, and things we think about that could go wrong in the future, and tell that to the business. On the other hand, business should be able to come to us and tell us about new ideas, and maybe we reprioritize those ideas. And all this, I'm talking a lot about continuous delivery, about test-driven development, engineering culture. Those kind of elements, the reason I talk about those is the transition I was going through with my company and the company before that in that area. So I learned that those large projects, the 6 to 7 figure projects, they are not really working that well anymore today, because they are always never really working out long term for both parties. So there's always one who's falling short, right? We needed to change something. And the idea of having a customized software solution based on a product, which you then can sell as a SaaS solution, is actually a gem for every business with a new vision, because you have the very basic things you really need to have. You don't need to compose them from somewhere else and need to create a team for that, which then needs to assemble that and all this kind of stuff. It's basically made for this type of business approach, right? The platform, and then going with that platform and really create a foundation for this new vision. And there is a reason why customized software as a service based on a product is a good idea, is simply that you can focus on creating value. So either you can entirely build it yourself and fund your own team, and maybe you're in 1 year you are there to actually start your endeavor, or you can pull everything together like the Mach architecture and gluing everything together with microservices. That is a possible way, but still your people need to learn to do that, and you have a maintainability cycle and a development cycle which is totally owned by you, and you need to make sure that this happens and done well, while you actually should have done some business, right? And the idea of a good, let's say, SaaS solution for customized software is to have at least 80 or 90% of what you need already done. And with that, you're confident with that, you have that already at your disposal, and the team which is working on that project is actually working on other projects as well with the very same platform, just with some customized aspects of it, which actually helps you to give you the correct touch for your software to make the product basically fit your vision, the business vision, the CEO's vision, the product owner's vision, right? The investor's vision. And that's actually the big idea behind customized software as service. Right before COVID, we really had problems to sell those solutions in the traditional way. The very same solutions, actually, we're doing today, just with an older approach. And it was hard to sell them. And the reason for that was every time we go to a large client and they wanted to have that, some units of them, they needed to go to superiors, and there was some limitation in budgets. And if you have crossed this threshold, it needs to get to the next superior and bubble up and all this kind of stuff. And this is where the typical lead funnel came to hold. So the entire process of acquiring a new client stagnated or basically stalled in that moment. And that was quite frustrating. And as soon as we came up with the idea, hey, we have built with 15 years of software, actually, around about 15 years, and we basically build everything several times. We know exactly what the baseline of every software in the business to business area actually is. And why are we not selling that as a service, right? Why don't we do that? And the point is, so we figured out, instead of having a six-figure sum, we actually, for the initial in development, we figured out a monthly sum, and it was in the thousands, of course. So it's nothing compared to some, I don't know, YouTube Premium or something like that. So we're really talking about business pricing still, but enough to actually make a sustainable business out of that, a maintained software out of that, a enhanced software. So it will be an evolving software and will be developed on, because it's a SaaS, it's rented, which means we're constantly building on that software. Plus the fact that everything is built up as multi-tenant systems. So every client can reuse it for all their clients. In that moment, it clicked for the client because of the simple reason that it is a reduced risk, because you can basically cancel contract, like in every SaaS contract. So you don't need to plan for 3, 4, 5 years and acquire this budget right now, because this is actually quite heavy for other smaller companies. They need to get funding for that, seeds for that. And in that moment, you can just start with that kind of software, and you start already at 80% of the software, right? Sometimes even if we have clients where it is actually, let's say, 97 or nearly 100%, they can just start to use that software, which is actually a product, right? So you can just use it, instance it and use it. And I think this as an idea for everyone else, this is where I think the market will shift towards too. So it will shift towards being a more flexible, more dynamic, more agile process in the business as well. So we think about business, agile business. We want to get fast into business, having a product which going fast to market, really bring that proof over the next 1 or 2 years and build upon that. And really think, hey, we don't want to spend the first year into a real software product or have a crappy MVP, which is not really telling you something. And then you need to still build your product upon that in order to make real business out of that. This gap is bridged with the idea of a good SaaS solution, which is made for that business approach. And this is my thought I had today, which I wanted to talk with you. about, because I think that's actually a future. So it's not only the software development space which changes over time, it's, I think, the business as well. And when I take a closer look, I see that many companies trying to do that in a way as well. So some do that with e-commerce systems and stuff like that, building some form of business out of that. But it is oftentimes more like dedicated to a very specific system, for example, doing Magento or something like that, and customize your Magento a little bit. But I think one step ahead. So really make a real SaaS software out of that. Really make sure that your product you create, your technical product, actually is a good foundation for the real vision. So you don't give a framework for the business vision. You take the vision of the business as a framework for your software. And I think this is what we should aim for. And part of that is to be no hurdle. It is your software product, the business, the budgeting should not be a hurdle in order to get into business with something. Most projects basically fail because of budgets and funding problems at some point. And too many companies out there, too many, let's say, first-time entrepreneurs are actually dreaming of becoming a multi-millionaire or even billionaire these days. And I think you should rethink that as well. Maybe start to become a solid entrepreneur before you become a unicorn entrepreneur in this case. And I think there is a step in between, and we should not try to have those people as role models who are actually extremely successful. No doubt they exist, but it's very unlikely for most people I know to get there. So if you are able to sustain a solid business with several employees, then you can forge some ideas for a better business in the future. So I think we should think about, so I would recommend to think it that way, because real wealth is not really being extremely rich or something like that. It's to have the freedom to do things. And imagine for a moment this business model when you actually are in this space where you create software in that manner for other companies. It is a very stable business. So it's not this typical up and down and up and down. It's very smoothly going up, maybe sometimes a little bit down and then up again. And this is what you actually want if you want to have a good work-life balance, not running into burnouts, and not letting your business dominate you. You want to be in balance with your business so that you can actually live good life with your family and friends and do what you want to do and not be hunted by business problems. And for that, you need to think long term, right? So if you're a young person or a mid-aged person and you think about those things, it won't take you 10 years to get there. It's just a matter of some years, and then you can constantly level up. And for me personally, I'm already quite happy right now. I followed this plan for just some years now. So it's basically, of course, the experience of all the years beforehand, but it's actually working quite well. And it's basically based on trust. It's based on credibility. It's based on being a partner instead of a customer-client relationship. And the reason why I'm actually recording this video is because I really hate agency-based, project-based engineering work, because it's not long term. It's always this up and downs and from one crisis to the other. And this is not how you do solid engineering. This is maybe interesting for the business people who are, let's say, excited about this dopamine kick if you are getting into a new contract, but this is definitely not exciting at all for the engineers. It's an engineering team, department, whatever. You want to definitely have something stable, think in iterations, going step by step, thinking long term. So in my opinion, software engineering is not compatible with project-based business. It's not. And I would really recommend everyone else to think about that way as well, especially software engineers. Think about what you actually want to do. And I encourage business persons, I'm a business person as well, and I recommend you, fellow entrepreneurs, to think about going the long route instead of the steep rocketing route, right? Building something more substantial over time and then spreading from there and becoming successful. So this is where I saw success in the last years, good success combined with a good balance in life. And this is what I really recommend to think about. So I hope that helped you a little bit. I just wanted to record this for you guys and think about that and tell me what you think. I'm really curious about your feedback and what you think about. If you like, please share this video, subscribe to the channel, to the blog. Would be really appreciating that support in that case, because I really love to talk about those things. Thanks a lot. Goodbye, everyone.